Good to go. All right. Hi, everybody. Golden Era Bookworm here, and I really have the pleasure, the absolute pleasure today of bringing you an interview with Alpha Destiny, Leonidas from Alpha Destiny. If you've been following his channel, you will have seen that he had an interview with me, and it was an awesome interaction of just, all about old school bodybuilding, the passion of old school bodybuilding. And equally, he has agreed to be interviewed for my channel, and it's going to be an awesome interview. So thank you, Alex, for being present and for accepting another wonderful talk with you on my channel.
Thank you for having me on, Carlos. I can't wait for round two.
All righty, man. Let's go. So one of the things that I wanted to ask, and probably some of my audience that I'm assuming they are familiar with your channel because it is very well known, especially in the natural bodybuilding community, is why is your channel called Alpha Destiny?
So I started the name Alpha Destiny when I was quite young, and therefore many of my ideas were immature, right? So the whole idea behind Alpha Destiny was you're coming across my work to fulfill your Alpha Destiny. It wasn't that I'm the alpha male and I'm just like gonna instruct you all to be like me. It was let's grow together, let's all be the best version of ourselves, and exchange knowledge and give advice that's not only about fitness, because back in the day I did used to talk a lot about lifestyle. I soon stopped. I went directly into bodybuilding, strength training, the things I'm known for now. But at the very start, there's that mind-body connection. You grow stronger, bigger, you become more confident in yourself, you grow as a person. And ultimately, this is what this natural bodybuilding journey is all about, leveling up the mind. So Alpha Destiny was just an expression of that. But moving forward, I'd like to move away from the concept of being alpha, because a lot of that is debunked, you can say, and also a little bit cringy. So I just want to be me, Alex Leonidas.
Nice. On that note, who is Alex Leonidas then?
Alex Leonidas is a man that's been obsessed with muscles since a young age. I recall watching, well, first of all, what got me really interested in this was Dragon Ball Z.
Nice.
I used to watch the episodes pretty much every night. It would go on at 9 o'clock, and my bedtime was like 9:30. So I would stay up just for that and then immediately go straight to bed. And just seeing those characters with their impressive physiques, right? And the gravity chamber, the feats of strength, the whole thing was mind-blowing to me. You know, obviously these are not real-life people, but I thought that I could somewhat resemble their physiques. Then you learn about their stats, right? Like, oh, I can have the lean body mass of Goku or Vegeta. And in general, just the badass attitude that these guys have, the hyperbolic time chamber, the whole journey, I've been obsessed since I'm a little, I remember play fighting with my friends. We would pretend to be different characters. We would wrestle, and we would do arm wrestling as well. And then when my mother wasn't home, I was like 12, I would use her dumbbell set. They went from 5 to 15 pounds, and I would do a few workouts here and there. And since then, it's just been me studying this game for years and years. I spend every day thinking about muscles and strength. I research every day. I try to make videos that are relatable, and it's just something I'm really passionate about, and I don't see that changing. Like, I'm in this for the long term, you know, for the rest of my life, you know. So Alex Leonidas is a guy who just lives this lifestyle.
Nice, man. Well said.
Thank you.
All right. What is so I've been looking at your website, outalpha.com, and you've released the naturally enhanced system. Can you explain what that is and what it is based on?
So the naturally enhanced system is designed on focusing, first of all, it's my ideal physique of what looks massive. I know on your channel you talk about the Herculean physique, the Apollon physique, then there's the bronze and silver era differences. We all have different looks, you know, and depending how you train, it's not just about your genetics. You can bias different divisions of the muscles. You can make some areas larger than others. It's that symmetry proportion that we're going for, right? And naturally enhanced is all about developing the outer extremities of the body, which you don't really see of much in today's age, especially in bodybuilders. But the whole thing is there's 6 muscles that I figured out that when you develop them, you look enhanced. And that is the neck, traps, upper back, shoulders, forearms, and glutes. And I say glutes, not quads, because the quad gives you the outer quad sweep, which actually gives you the X-taper physique. That's what's common in modern bodybuilding. But if you look at some of the old school guys, like Steve Reeves, for example, he had some nice quads, but they weren't massive to the point where it was dwarfing his upper body. So I was always inspired by those old school guys. I didn't want those massive legs, but I wanted them to look good, you know? So you got that V taper, but then when you turn around, you got that thickness from the rear. Your upper back is exploding. You got these gorilla glutes. So you look strong from top to bottom, right? Then the whole thing with the upper back, traps, neck, shoulders, that's the yoke, because what makes you look big is not what's in the center of your body, it's what comes out of it, you know? If you got traps close to your ears, you got these cannonball Frieza delts, you know, you're going to look freaking impressive. And that's often the distinction between someone who looks small and big. It's just these little areas. Oh, and the forearms too. A lot of guys have stick forearms. You measure it, it's like 11, 12 inches. I looked at the arm wrestling world years back and realized that their arms look kind of freaky. And it was because their forearms just look massive, you know? So specializing in that, not just being a bicep and tricep dude, is what contributes to that outer. So you're developing all these areas, and you just look big. And then there's the emphasis on the body fat percentage. Most naturals are going to look their biggest around 15, 20%, not being shredded year round. So that might mean being 15 to 20 pounds heavier than what you're currently at. And just by having that extra bulk, it levels up your measurements.
Absolutely.
So your arms might go from like 15 inches to 16, you know, and because you're already muscular, it doesn't look like a fat arm. It just adds on to your already jacked frame. So, and then the final aspect is the illusion strategies, which is wearing specific clothing that highlights your frame, growing out a beard so you don't see all that neck fat, and just trying to make yourself look leaner than what you actually are. This way, you actually do look pretty good at a higher body fat. So that's the whole look.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I like that. I mean, what you just said sounds a lot like old school principles. It kind of goes into the aesthetics principles too. I know that if I was to pull out actually, I will do it because it's a great demonstration of what you just said. If we look at Frank Zane's silhouette.
Wow.
I love doing this when we talk about what you just said. Looking at the external parts of the body that really highlight just the physique, like that can transform a physique.
That's a great example.
It's a great example. And when somebody talks about it, I immediately bring this out. You can see the traps. I mean, Frank's saying that he said he didn't develop his traps as much, but you can see they're well developed, as is his neck. He's got bolder shoulders. His forearms as well. He was very specific on saying to train the forearms because otherwise the whole arm looks out of proportion, right?
Right.
Big upper back, etc. All the things you just mentioned.
The calves,
so
you can see the quads aren't going past the hips excessively.
Exactly. It's not excessive, right? When we look at these old school physiques, and what you just said is spot on. I mean, the real old, when we're looking at real old school, a lot of people go old school, 90s, 2000s. Nah, man, that's not old school. I don't consider that old school. Right? That's like really crazy steroid era, right?
Yeah.
We're talking old school, minimal steroids or no steroids at all. They had that classic physique. And what you just mentioned about even the glutes, Reg Park is a great example there of someone having a similar physique, bolder shoulders, wide lats, great neck and trap, forearms, all of that, upper back. Not enormous legs, but he had a large, a pair of glutes because of the heavy style of training that he incorporated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a good example bringing that up, and just to highlight your point, I agree 100%.
I love that example.
Yeah, yeah, that's Frank Zane's Symmetry. It's an awesome book. He actually talks about it. He had a discussion with Bob Kennedy back in the 70s, and Bob Kennedy actually saw this photo and said, you know what this photo shows? That if you were to grab a human and simply slap muscle in the right places, you could transform that physique immediately. And he's so right. I mean, that's kind of what I just forgot to say. Your point highlights that exactly. If you specify muscle hypertrophy at certain points, you're spot on.
That's the thing. You look bigger than you are just by developing these regions.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot of guys that are just bulky, but there's no symmetry.
Absolutely.
They haven't developed specific regions. So even though their lean body mass could be high, and on paper, you know, they do have a lot of muscles, it just doesn't look right.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all about, that's why bodybuilding is an art form. You got to know what you're looking for and really get specific.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well said. All right. On that note, why do you love old school bodybuilding?
Well, the biggest reason is that they're real naturals.
Absolutely.
I'm tired of these I call them steroid monkeys. I know that's very insulting, but I'm just keeping it real with you. They piss me off to no end because they have ruined what real bodybuilding is all about, which in our last interview, you absolutely crushed it. Bodybuilding. You're not just building the muscles. It's the entire system that goes with it. So you look at these old school bodybuilders who often died in their 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
You look great in your older age. You're youthful. You have the energy. You still have the muscle and the strength. You're just getting better and better. Mm-hmm. And just the physiques are impressive. They hit different. They don't look the same. Mm-hmm. There's a specific look, you know, that even if you look at classic divisions in the modern age, they don't look like the classic guys of even the golden era. And that's because of the new drugs that are constantly coming out and the standards with the shreddedness and all that. So when I look at, and plus these were men, like you said, right? True gentlemen. Yeah. I look at these dudes from the late 1800s, early 1900s, the whole bronze and silver, right? Those are my favorites. Not only is their physique impressive, but their character, what they were able to accomplish at the time with such limited resources, mm-hmm. the inventiveness, you know, like they were ahead of their time in many ways. And today everyone's obsessing about what's optimal, you know, doing these new fancy movements and getting so overcritical about specific things that actually don't matter. And these guys just trained their asses off. They did movements that have stood the test of time and didn't make excuses. They didn't care about their testosterone levels, even though they were probably higher back then. Not that you need high T to begin with, but there was no talk about genetics, natural limits, any of this crap. It was just, I'm going to be the best version of myself. And I really resonate with their message. And when I look at some of their performances, like feats of strength, it impresses me. Like the reason why I decided to bench 405 as a natural is because I saw them do it. I knew it was possible. I didn't have to second guess it. I knew. You know, look at Marvin Eder, for example. And even way before that, George Hackenschmidt. A lot of guys were deadlifting 700 pounds, benching 405, overhead pressing 250 plus, mm-hmm. squatting 500. Like, these are realistic goals. And if we just go back to that era, we realize that we're all capable of so much more. So they're inspirational. They're the real deal. And it's their muscle, 100%, all earned. Mm-hmm. It's not drug muscle where you injected your way to gains. Because these guys can talk all day that, yeah, they still work hard and all that. Great, sure you do. But it's not all your muscle. Because when you get off, you're going to lose it. These guys didn't. So just the whole message, I love everything about it. And I wish we would have stayed in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not much that can be done about it now. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying 100%. It's the same with me, 100%. Then what is your opinion then? I mean, you've really touched on something that I think I'm also very self-critical. even though I am a scientist, the modern era needs almost validation for anything that is said nowadays. If science hasn't proved it, it's not valid, it's out the window. So what is your opinion on modern science regarding bodybuilding?
Are you talking about the methods that are being developed by exercise scientists?
Methods, diet, just the whole detail that goes into the science of body.
I love science, not gonna lie. I hated it when I was younger. Funny how that works. But I'm constantly up to date with the books and even the research papers. I'm subscribed to specific newsletters, and I follow individuals who are sharing what's coming out. And what I think is, the thing is with science, it often confirms what we already know, or it can debunk specific aspects, but it's not doesn't tell us the entire story, right? And the thing is, even if optimal methods are developed, how much better are they is a question. Because people talk about efficiency, but they can't quantify how efficient it is. And usually what I see is people overcomplicating things to gain maybe 10 to 15% more gains, which might matter if you're really advanced and you're trying to do everything in your power to overcome plateaus. But at the end of the day, the basics work. They're here to stay. They were here 100 years ago. They'll be here in another 100 years. And it's how I build my physique. It's how the old school greats who look better than most modern bodybuilders today did it. And people are just trying to reinvent the wheel constantly and using science to confirm that. And sometimes science changes, right? So you have to look at both sides, experience and people who are conducting the research, long term, of course, and has to be well done, right? But I think when you actually understand it, it could definitely be useful. So about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I got really into biomechanics, and it's helped me further develop my physique because some muscles weren't growing at the rate I wanted, and it's because I didn't understand how to properly train them. So looking into science for that was helpful. Knowing the different functions of the muscles, the length, the tension relationship, the shorten position, the length of position, strength curves as a whole. Like, there's stuff that could really benefit you, but not all of it needs to be obsessed about, and sometimes it can contradict what you see in the real world. And that's when you got to go back to yourself. What are you going to trust? Your experience or something that's very speculative at best. And I'll give you an example. A lot of people are stating that weighted pull-ups are not a good lat developer. This is what people are saying in 2022. And that boggles my mind because historically that's been the greatest exercise of all time. And as someone who specialized in weighted pull-ups for years, I can tell you that nothing grew my back like that movement. And it did it too well, as a matter of fact, that my lats became overdeveloped. So when I hear stuff like that, it really blows my mind, So some people take it to the extreme and others are more objective. So I think if you follow the right guys, you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, I've been criticized myself of when I've recently posted. I'm approaching finally, after all this issues with my shoulders and stuff, finally approaching a weighted pull-up of one plate. Woo!
That's good.
And it's my first step towards the Magic 4. And I was just getting comments like, "Oh, you'll never grow a big back like that." And I just laugh. Historically, that's been shown to be so productive, probably the most productive. Leroy Colbert was one great example.
Yeah.
Said, you want a wide back, just chin, and keep on chinning, and you'll get that wide back. And so I just throw their comments out the window. But it's really sad to see, and I agree with what you're saying again. A lot of people just hitting on the weighted pull-up. I don't understand.
They're dismissing time-proven methods for stuff that might not even be here in the next few years, because there's a lot of debate in that world. That's the truth. Yeah. And all we got to do is look in the real world, not only the bodybuilders of back then, but calisthenics athletes.
Yes.
Like there's this sport called street lifting where people compete in the weighted dip, weighted pull-up, and squat. And I'm going to tell you something. Every single one of those dudes have massive backs.
Absolutely.
Is that surprising? Like, it's not because of genetics. They're not all freaks competing over there. It's you're doing the best movement. It's that simple. And
Absolutely.
all the best naturals I've seen built their backs with similar methods, you know? So who are you going to trust?
Yeah, another example is Axel, of course, who also does weighted dips. And yeah, he's even told me that he has to kind of, I guess, reduce his intensity on that because his back is just so damn massive from the weighted chins that he doesn't need more back. And just like you, I mean, you got such a massive back. You just don't need it anymore. It's such a great builder. So
it's too effective.
Yeah, you said it. It's too effective.
Yeah, that's it.
Next question then. You've touched on modern science, and I agree with the fact that it's great for extracting specific knowledge, but not obsessing over it. That was such a clear word that I want to emphasize. Too many people just obsess about every detail, and that's not the way to go. I think it's really good at extracting certain things you want answers for. So 100% there. What is your opinion then on modern bodybuilding overall?
I don't like it. I don't follow these guys. To me, they look hideous, and they don't give advice that's really helpful for naturals in most cases. Some of them do. Like my favorite person for that would be Dr. Mike from Renaissance Periodization. He's incredibly intelligent and incorporates a variety of different methods and can back up what he says with logical arguments. But aside from him, I'm not impressed. The physiques don't look good. The message is not about health. These guys are dying young. And for those who say, well, look at this bodybuilder who died at like 72. That's not old. So what are you talking about? It disgusts me that people are giving ages that are less than the average age of death in sedentary people who never train and eat like garbage. How is that healthy in any kind of way? I don't resonate with it, man. And I don't know what else to say beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a lot of a lot that just doesn't resonate with me either. A lot of people say, talk about the Olympia, and they say, why don't you cover it? Because I just don't need to. I don't want to either. It's not that I even need to.
Man, I get excited when I watch your videos on unknown old school bodybuilders. That's cool. I like seeing these gems from the early 1900s. Like, who is this dude looking like that? Yeah. That's more impressive to me than some guy who's just roided up to the max. And how is he going to change your life in any kind of way?
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, we could go on all about this.
There's so much to say about it. That's the thing.
Yeah. I don't want to turn this interview into a negative criticism.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Let's move on. Speaking though of modern bodybuilding, modern science, the modern ways now, what about social media? What's your take there on bodybuilding? I mean, personally, I've given you my opinion. Yeah. There are positive and negative aspects. What's your opinion?
Social media is a double-edged sword. It's all about how you use it. Now, there's a lot of craziness out here, and most of the things I see in the fitness community aren't that good, but there is that, let's say 20% that's super on point. And I would say that if I wasn't born into the internet age, I wouldn't know what I know now. So it's all about the desire. If you're coming in this with the right intentions, you want to learn, and you're going to follow the right people, then social media is fantastic. But you have to keep yourself accountable and not follow individuals who aren't going to help you out. So if you go on my Instagram page, for example, and you click following, there's very few steroid users. There's a bit, right? And if there are, like, the ones that are, they're extremely knowledgeable in their own right. And I'm not going to judge them just because they're enhanced. And many of them did pay their dues. They were natural for 10 plus years. And, you know, I'm not going to be overly critical if their advice is sound. So you just got to surround yourself with the right people is what I'm saying. And in that context, you're going to learn every day, and you'll get a better physique than the people who say had only access to magazines. Like if someone is interested in Golden Era Bookworm, they're going to do great because now they can see all the methods. And had you not been here, you know, that's a lot less people that are going to acquire the physique of their dreams, especially if it's in an old school context. Like where else are you going to learn about Steve Reeves, John Grimmick, Reg Park, all these legends, right? You won't unless someone had the courage to come out and make videos. So I think if you come into the space with the intention of, I'm going to help as many people as possible, I'm going to give information, and we're all going to grow together. We're going to build our own community. Maybe it won't be super mainstream, but we're going to do it regardless. Then social media is what Napoleon Hill called infinite intelligence. So
nice.
I look at it in a positive light because I choose to surround myself with positive individuals.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at all the craziness out here.
Very nice, man. And thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Then understanding the importance of social media. I mean, we both understand the importance of it. What is your mission, seeing that you have this great following of 283,000, I believe now, subscribers, approaching the magic, or not magic, the monumental number of 300,000. What is your mission then? I mean, you've got a large audience. That gives you power. That gives you voice. Yeah. What is your mission? Is it to improve the natural standards, increase the awareness of old school lifting? What is it?
Well, it's about natural lifting as a whole. I just want people to acquire the body that they deserve, to maximize their muscular frame, get as strong as they'd ever want, and stop making excuses. I just want the standards to be raised and for people to get good information. So it's not only what I bring, but I want the community to be strengthened as a whole. And that's why I invite guys on my channel to talk about their advice. So it's about leveling up the knowledge, maybe bringing back what old school lifting should have been. Like we're reviving that era in a sense. I want people to do well. And my message overall is health is number one. And you want to be in this for the long term. We're not trying to just look good for a few years and then quit. This is really a lifestyle. And I want to show people that you could do great as a natural. You can acquire elite numbers. You can look better than many steroid users in some cases. You can look better than you even think. And the gains never stop. In fact, what I've learned in the last year or so is that the natural limit doesn't actually exist. And what I mean by that is progress is just extremely slow to the point where you might call it a limit, but it's not. You just don't see it right away. And it takes years and years and years to get those micro amounts of muscle that add up to something great. And if people just understood that and, again, train their asses off for the next few decades, they would be surprised what's really possible. So I just want everyone to stop making excuses. Embrace natural lifting. Take it to the extreme, and you'll see this is the way.
You said something there that I've been discussing a lot with Axel recently. We talk almost every day. I've asked him because I've started to realize myself, we come from different beginnings, so to speak, starting points, more to speak. I've rebuilt my body using bodybuilding, which is why I love bodybuilding, because it doesn't just build a body, it can rebuild your body.
That's right.
You've started from a stronger and healthier, you could say, more functional starting point than me, and taken your body to points where you probably never thought possible, just like Axel.
Yep.
And I asked him a question, which I'm going to ask you too. And you've kind of already answered it, but I want you to elaborate on it further. Do you think there is a limit as a natural?
No.
Yeah.
The limit, if you're going to call it one, is possible sarcopenia, or you're just so old that you're not on your peak anymore. So maybe you can call it time, but it's not a limit in the sense that it's impossible to put on any more amounts of muscle. Even if that muscle is undetectable in a visual sense, you're still acquiring it. Because if we go by the simple argument of progressive overload, right, that it's simply a side effect of hypertrophy, not the other way around. And what I mean by that is, to get stronger, the adaptation of putting on muscle had to occur first. So because a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, right? So if that muscle if the cross-sectional area improved, right, you're going to see that in force production. So if that equates to a repetition added over the course of a month on a given set, then what is that? Beyond neural factors, after a certain level, it's going to be muscle, right? Yeah. So if you're able to add on a rep, well, that's proof that you're getting muscle. And the thing is, I've yet to see a single individual who stopped improving in any kind of capacity. It doesn't exist from what I've seen. Like even some bodybuilders who've been competing naturally for 20 years, when they say, oh, I hit my natural limit and that's because I went on PEDs, they didn't. Because if you look at their training, there's still something going up. So I think it just comes down to your expectations. Like, how much muscle do you think you're going to put on? It won't be insane like a steroid user, but it doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, there's muscle gaining charts, right? The lowest recommendation, if you've been training for like 10 plus years, they'll say you gain about 0.5 pound to 2 pounds of muscle a year. But let's just go by 0.5 pound of muscle a year as a seasoned lifter. That's something. Yet those charts, you're going to see in brackets, it clearly states not worth calculating. My question is, why is that not worth calculating? Because 0.5 pounds, okay, I'm terrible at math, by the way, but 0.5 times 10 years, okay, that's 5 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
So if you're 30 years old and you train till 40, so let's say you started training at 20 to 30, you put on the majority of your muscle mass, right? Mm-hmm. Then from 20 to 30, you put on another 5 pounds of muscle. You don't mean to say you're going to look that much bigger and more impressive?
Yeah, I agree.
And what if you do it again? Let's say that amount halves, right? So you get 2.5 pounds of muscle from ages 40 to 50. That's still an improvement. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'm trying to stress. Not that you acquire the same amount of muscle on a yearly basis, just that you can keep putting on muscle for decades at a time. Mm-hmm. And by the time it becomes so not visible, you're going to be old enough that you don't really care about putting on extra muscle, and you're already going to, you paid your dues. You look amazing. So it doesn't really matter. So getting rid of this idea that, oh, at some point I'm going to stall is not serving anybody. Just, if anything, approach it like you don't have limits, and that'll get you much further. So it's a shift in mindset, and then what's actually happening on a physical level.
Well said again. I mean, the things we were talking about were obviously hypertrophy, but also strength. I find that strength just continues to go up and up and up with the years. It doesn't stop. Your body becomes more efficient, more stronger. Yeah, just as you said, in my opinion, I've gone from cripple to what I am now. So if I can do that as a cripple, then how can there be any limits? That's the discussion I was having with Axel. I mean, I see where he is. I see where you are. And I can only see you guys getting bigger and stronger as the years go by. So
that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I've seen it over the last few years. You know, in 2019, I was looking amazing, but I look even better now. And now I'm getting the compliments 3 years after. But what happened in those 3 years? I put on a little bit of muscle. It's nothing crazy, My shirts are a little bit tighter, a bit heavier when I'm leaner, but it shows.
Yeah.
And you got that muscle maturity as well. And the older you get, the smarter you get. And you know how to refine your training. Like if you can do it all over again, I believe you could hit your peak status in a faster amount of time just because you have that knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Speaking of now being an actual lifter, what old school methods then would you say have you implemented and found most effective in building both strength and muscular hypertrophy?
So beyond the methods, the main thing would be the exercise selection. I found that you can't go wrong with those movements. So the bench press, to me, is the best chest builder. Some guys are going to argue the dumbbell bench because there's more of a converging effect. So the humerus is coming out and in. But the problem with that is the stability when you get really strong. And we know that when a movement is unstable, the motor unit recruitment goes down. So it's like, are you going to pick something that's a little bit more optimal in a biomechanics sense, or something else that allows for a bit more overload and is more stable? And then regarding range of motion, it's a lie to state that dumbbells give you more range of motion when you're past a certain point, because at some point they're going to get so big that it's basically the same range of motion as a barbell bench press.
So true. That's so true.
So that's only true with lighter loads or if you're going to use higher repetitions.
Yeah.
So that's why, of course, dumbbells are old school as well. But I'm just saying the barbell bench press has always served me and people I've worked with. And there's a reason why it was a staple. The weighted pull up. We talked about it before. That's your best back builder right there. The squat. A lot of people talk trash about the squat in the modern age. And I get where they're coming from, that something like a hack squat is more stable and more directed to the quads. But as an overall mass builder, you can never go wrong with these, and some of these biomechanics gurus actually did build their legs with squats and then stopped after the muscle was acquired. So there's one dude right now, he was doing 405 for 10 reps on the barbell back squat. And now he's only doing hack squats. And it's like, you didn't look where you came from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
there's ways to bias it more to the quads as well, like heel elevation, using an SSB with longer handles. This way you're more upright like a front squat, but load management isn't the problem. So I like to look at these old school lifts, then ask another question. How can I make it even better for bodybuilding purposes? You expand, right? So like for the bench press, I think the powerlifters got it right that you want to pause your presses in the bottom, because this is the most difficult position for the pecs, and you're re-exploding off a dead stop. You don't want to use momentum, which can put more pressure on the anterior delts and triceps. But yeah, going back to old school lifting, just the physiques themselves, right? The symmetry, focusing on that, you can call that a method, technically, because you're not just trying to pack on mass everywhere. You're getting a very specific look, right? So by just by wanting to look that way, the exercise selection will be reflected. There's movements also like the dumbbell pullover, right? Rib cage expansion. We talked about that in our previous interview. Guys like Leroy Colbert were really big on that. Not only does it develop the thorax region, but it helps your shoulder mobility, works the serratus, gets a stretch on the lats, and works the chest simultaneously. It's a nice exercise that kind of does it all, and then when you combine it with the breathing squats, it can help with the rib cage expansion. So that's something that's a lost art. I started doing those, but I used to back in the day as well when I was a teenager. And I actually do have a large rib cage, so maybe that was a contributor. Who knows? I would do sprints plus the I would do sprints, swimming, and the dumbbell pullovers. So I'm sure there was a correlation there. The emphasis on calisthenics, that was really big back in the day. A lot of old school bodybuilders actually used gymnastic rings because they didn't have cable machines So if they wanted to work the shortened position of certain muscles, well, you can change the direction of resistance by using a suspension system. So if I want the extra squeeze on the pecs, I can do that with gymnastic rings. I can isolate very specific regions with that. And then there's just the strength itself that these guys had. Enough said, it's just a motivational factor. So I think beyond the methods is just the message that they're sharing and trying to aspire to be like them. You want to have that kind of look. You want the strength, and yeah, like I can't point to any specific methods that like right now. It's more so the whole thing that it encompasses.
Nice. What would you've probably touched already on this, but I want to actually expand further on it. Let's talk about your favorite lifts then, specifically for each body part. What would you say are your favorite lifts for increasing muscle mass and strength in the chest area? You've mentioned bench press. Are there any others that you think are very valuable for increasing that area?
Yeah. So not only the bench press, but all the variations. So the Swiss bar bench.
Yeah.
The Larson press, which is a no leg drive bench press. So your feet are just hanging off. Yeah, those are really good. Benching with accommodating resistance. I like chains in particular. So 30 to 60 pounds of chains added, which makes the top harder. For the lower chest, I absolutely love the weighted dip. And to me, it's always felt great. I think I have the correct build for it. But my best weighted dip is 230 pounds.
Nice.
And just training for that, I notice incredible growth all the way through. And whenever I include dips in my program, everything is better. The general strength, hypertrophy, I swear by dips. And then alongside that would be the weighted push-up. And these, I'm extremely confused why guys don't give it a shot, because it's very similar to the dip, without the extra stress on the joints.
Yep.
And you actually get the same training effect as a bench press. So if I put 160 pounds on my back and do sets of 10 to 12, that's like benching 275 for reps. And I know this because the proximity to failure is the same. So I think people should get a military backpack and stuff some chains or plates in there and do some darn push-ups, not only off the floor, but also the deficit version. Because the bar that's become more popular, it's called the camber bar or the McDonald bar, right? And that gives you inches more of range of motion at the bottom to focus on the weighted stretch. Well, you can do that with weighted push-ups by, I think Vince Gironda had his own version of this. It was called the fulcrum push-up. Yeah. That's it, right? But he was doing a knee bend at the bottom.
Yeah.
My version doesn't require a knee bend. You keep everything straight, but it's the same positioning. You got two boxes in front of you and then one in the rear, and you're doing full range of motion. And that will develop your chest probably better than the bench press, to be honest. Like, it's really that good. And it works as serratus. It's really easy on recovery. Stuff like that. So those would be my top three for chest. I also like incline close grip benching. Anywhere between 30 and 45 degrees. Yeah, those are the ones for chest. It's very simple training, as you can see.
Simple and effective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I've personally done the fulcrum push-up for recovery to increase the recovery of my shoulder joint. Before I got into dips, before I got into chins. And I did it even weighted. And yeah, you're right. The hypertrophy is just insane.
People got to give it an honest shot.
Yeah.
They think it looks weird having a backpack on or a vest, but just try it. You'll feel the difference.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to back. What do you think? What do you believe are the best builders for back? You for the back development. You've talked about weighted chins. What else?
So it depends what kind of part of the back you're trying to work, right?
Let's go from up to down.
All right, so let's talk about the traps first. I'm all about the weighted stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, I don't do these anymore, but I used to do a lot of heavy rack pulls to overload the stretching portion. And I don't care what anybody says, that put on more mass than anything I've ever tried. It worked. Obviously, it comes with a ton of fatigue. It's hard on the joints, and you will hit your posterior chain to a tremendous extent. But the side effect is larger traps. So those power shrugs for the middle traps, because you're still getting the squeeze at the top, but then it just yanks you back, and you get that deep pulling sensation on the traps. And then for rows, you want anything that has a flared out arm path. So that could be anything, but the way I train these days is strictly rowing without my lower back. So it's either going to be chest supported or my feet will be braced on something. So I don't do barbell rows anymore. That's what I used to do, right? And I got very strong at those, even with a cheating style. And again, that cheat will further provide a stretch, you know. But now it's just having the correct arm path and progressively overloading with decent enough form. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's all about the arm path, right?
Yeah.
So if you're out here, it's going to be a lot of traps and rhomboids. You can even see them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go 45 degrees, it's going to be a lot more rear delt.
Yeah.
Then if you get low, it's going to be more lat. And I also apply that philosophy to weighted pull-ups. So I don't just use pull-ups as a lat builder. I do it for everything. So super wide grip, teres major, upper back, some thoracic lat, but it's mostly for thickness. And then if I want my lats to really pop, I'll actually flex my spine, either by bringing the knees up or doing like a hollow body position, you know, and I'll keep a neutral grip. That's about shoulder width apart. And I'll just get a nice squeeze like that, you know.
Like a sternum chin up.
Not a sternum, well, the sternum chin up, because you're extending your back, you can say it's slightly less lat bias, but you can then argue that the super range of motion kind of accounts for that. But I just try to keep an upright torso with a neutral grip for lats, you know. Not that you need perfection though. Let's just get that straight.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the rows, like I said, you can. It's not about vertical versus horizontal pulls. It's about biasing the correct tissues, right? And you can do that with any exercise as long as you know what you're doing. So these days, it's not about what's best. It's about just knowing how to target. Yeah. So those would be the major ones. These days, I do mostly cable rows and machines, just because they're easy to set up. They have high stability, and I don't have to hit my lower back. I mean, so I'll favor those. Or if you want something that's more old school, the seal row is the way to go. So you elevate a flat bench on some boxes, and now you got free weights plus chest support, and you can get more out of less weight. And you can even use a trap bar for that to get that neutral grip in and extended range of motion. So that's my approach these days.
Nice. Now, just on a little tangent on the back, noticed that you started adopting chest expander work recently.
Oh yeah.
So you want to expand on that? I've got a couple of them, as you know.
I'll expand on that. So I got the chest expander because of you. I saw your video on Fred Roland, and I swear to God, like immediately after I went and bought one, I was like, there's something to this thing. And it really got me thinking, like, why the heck aren't people using this in 2022 when all of the old school greats used it? I thought about that question for a long time, and you kind of clarified some details that because of drugs, people no longer had to use these things.
Yeah.
I think what also changed it was resistance bands. They were cheaper to make and more appealing to the masses, because the chest expander is this primitive looking device with springs and like hooks, and it looks like hard work, and it is.
It is.
You know? I think people just didn't want to put in the work, and they were almost too effective. And maybe it's better that something like that isn't available for everyone because it's so darn good. Like, like that's getting extreme on my part, but I recently hit 5 springs, but only for like
Nice.
low repetitions, super
Yeah.
low reps. You know, I can't curl it with 5 yet. That I do 4, but I can expand 5 with an overhand grip, right? And then for 4 springs, I can do 12 reps with the underhand, right?
Nice. Nice.
But when I started, I couldn't even budget for 1. You know, so if I'm struggling with this thing, and people have seen my strength over the years,
Yeah.
well, this is not a gimmick. This is legit. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine what someone would look like if they could do 5 springs on all the movements. Like, you're gonna have a great physique, you know?
Absolutely.
And they hit different from the bands because the 3-dimensional effect and the dimensions are very specific, and the tension increase is gradual, and even the dimensions are like, the people who invented these, they knew what they were doing. You know, it's not some arbitrary length. Well, I mean, it is in the context of the design, but it's specific.
Yeah.
And what I noticed from the chest expander and looking at these athletes is that they had very well developed upper traps and delts.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now I know why.
Yeah. I mean,
in fact, like, this whole idea of training upper traps. Before I mentioned the middle traps from shrugs, right?
mm-hmm.
That's what shrugs work. Because the studies that were done on trap training, they put the EMG nodes on the wrong part of the discs. It was 1 too low. So if you want to work your upper traps, you actually need to be in this horizontal plane right here.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that? A chest expander.
Absolutely.
and since I've been using it, I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but I find my upper traps are looking pretty juicy again, like they did back in the day. You know, like they're popping.
I can see that.
And I think that has something to do with it. And then even the delts, you're working your side delts, the rear delts.
Yeah.
This is going to contribute to that 3-dimensional look. So it goes back to naturally enhanced. The chest expander is a freaking great addition.
Yeah.
So I'm loving the versatility and just the history behind it. I think it's really badass.
Awesome. So I want to show people what a chest expander actually looks like. I've got 2 here. Some people may not be aware of them. Again, you're spot on. So this is the expander here.
Mine looks exactly like that.
It's got 2 springs on. It can hold up to 5. This one in particular, I got it from Asia. It's a real steel spring. And as you mentioned, it's responsible for a lot of people go, oh, these Bronze Era athletes had huge traps and awesome upper back. And if you look at one of Fred Roland's most famous images, where he's doing a back double bicep, his back is just studded all over. And it's because of this stuff, right?
It 100% is.
I hate to disappoint you, Alex. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, and I'm sure you've been getting a lot of questions too, as to where you can purchase the good chest expander. Sure, you can get yourself a 5 steel spring chest expander. But as you and I know, Robert Baraban from Austria, who makes some of the best Bronze Era strongman equipment, has come out with a new beast. And this is the first time I'm opening it. You can see it's live. I saved it for this interview, Alex, just for you, mate.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man.
So, there we go. Freaking beast, man. Oh, my God.
Robert stuff, you know it's going to be good. Let's see.
All right.
Whoa. Oh, my God.
It's 7.
Wow.
7 springs, man. Look at that. Now, the handles are even made out of steel as well. Right?
That's crazy. So you get a nice grip on that too. Is it heavy in your hands too?
God damn, it is heavy. This must weigh a good 10 pounds at least. I mean, I'm holding it, and because I'm holding it extended right now with my arms out, it's already tiring me out. So the weight of it alone is a workout in itself. So this is the beast of all testing. Man, unbelievable. Now, I've even told Robert that Reg Park himself developed his own chest expander with 10 springs, right? And it was just, the handles are just ginormous for this thing. They're humongous, right? But even so, having said that, from what I know and all the study I've done, Robert Baraban's 7-spring chest expander is the biggest and the strongest chest expander in the world. So,
well, right now, there's no doubt about it. The quality that you see in most chest expanders are not really the best.
Yeah.
So something like Robert's, like I don't, that looks amazing. You know,
Yeah.
It's heavy duty steel all the way through. Your grip is not going to slip either. The wooden one, you have to chalk up real good, and sometimes you feel your wrists a bit. You know,
it's so light. I admit, like, it's just, this weighs nothing in comparison to that, and the construction of it, you can tell it's just going to be so much more durable. You're going to get some serious workout out of that. You'll fry up your upper back big time with that and get some serious gains. So make sure that at least you, Alex, let Robert know that you're interested.
100%.
I think after this video so I'm going to actually do a video on Fred Roland's chest expander workout because I've got so many requests for it. I'm going to be demonstrating it with Robert's chest expander. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to want to purchase it. I know that Robert hasn't advertised it on his website yet. He's just sent me one of the prototypes, and just to showcase it and see what people think about it. And oh man, I can just tell you, it's the first time you saw I opened it. It's a freaking beast. So
Wow.
Can't wait to use it.
I'm curious how it feels like in comparison. Like, are the springs, like, are the industrial springs, are the dimensions like closer or wider?
Well,
like, how's it gonna feel if you use the same amount?
Now. Let's do a comparison right now. I'll hold them both with my hands. So yeah, I mean, the dimensions are almost exactly the same. You can see the hands just line up, right?
Gotcha.
So it's the same.
So it'll be a nice upgrade for those who, yeah.
The springs are roughly the same size. I'll admit that the wooden-handed springs are slightly longer, but these are way. Whoops, making a mess here. The construction is just superior. That's the thing, like. I think the fact that the handles are heavy are just going to make the whole workout even harder, you know?
Right.
It's going to build stability along with musculature because you have to hold it that much more.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, if you're trying, okay, like, you know, with the bench press, there's the bamboo bar.
Yeah.
If you load up a lot of weight on that, it's going to be unstable.
Yeah.
So you need a heavy enough implement to carry the weight. And I think it's similar with that expander. Like, if you do 5 springs on that compared to the cheaper one, it's probably going to feel more secure and stable. So
yeah, it's just going to be a superior workout. But anyway, moving on.
Nice.
Exciting stuff. And as Robert said, if you wanted to make it into a Reg Park one, all you got to do is add 3 more springs.
My God.
Yeah, he's pretty crazy about taking it to the extreme.
Yeah.
All right, increasing muscle mass and strength. Moving on to shoulders now. What's your favorite, would you say, lifts for that, for shoulders?
So I've always relied on the overhead press, you know, and some people will ask me, Alex, how come I never see you do side raises in your videos? And why do your side delts still look good? Is it because you have amazing genetics? And I don't think that's the case. You can put me up. You can put me up to most naturals, including those who compete in bodybuilding, and there won't be an incredible difference in our delt size. I think people just need to focus on their base. You know, I'm not saying that side raises are bad, and I plan on going really intense on them soon. But even doing basically zero training for them, I can still side raise more than most people. I'm still very strong at it for some reason. And I think there's a generalized carryover effect to just getting strong at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a 225 strict standing overhead press at 185 body weight. So that's how I built my delts. I just got stronger at this basic compound movement, right? And I did that for years and years, along other pressing movements that obviously contribute. Like if you're gonna do weighted dips, full range of motion bench press, anything that's full range of motion, like your front delts cannot get worked to a tremendous extent.
They're
so
stretched. Yeah.
Over time, you'll just see that without even thinking about it, your delts just get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is the rear delts, right? I told you earlier that I do like 45-degree rows to focus on the rear delts. The thing is, I started doing that. I've always done my rows that way because I was trying to complement the bench press pattern. And when you're benching, you're about here.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing the guillotine style, right? So you're benching like this. So I'm like, okay, if I want something specific, I'm going to row the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Little did I realize that was making my rear delts massive over many years. And I used to think that it was the band face pulls and all the isolation work that I used to do that was contributing to that 3D look. But now that I really examine it, I was doing rows the wrong way the whole time. And that was an accidental side effect. It grew my rear delts. So the rear and the front is what's really giving that nice rounded look. And then the side, there's obviously going to be some splash over to a certain extent. You know?
Yeah.
So overhead press, I can't stress it enough. These days, I don't do the standing version anymore. I only do it seated with back support, just because you can get more stability out of it. Mm-hmm. And it lines up better with the anterior delt. Like you get more of a stretch in the bottom. Because if you're 100% vertical, it's really emphasizing the mid range, right? Mm-hmm. But if you lean back a little bit, now when you're here, you get that extra tension, right? So I've been doing that, and I do feel my delts are coming up even more because now I can lift heavier. I'm not limited by my core strength, my thoracic, all that. I can just focus on dummy pressing the weight up. And I feel like this has been the craziest addition to my delt training. Just the good old seated anterior delt press. And I primarily do it with a barbell, but dumbbells are good too.
Nice. What about, I mean, you've talked about, let me just stress one thing you said, the overhead press. A lot of people have been asking you about why is it because you only focus on pressing that your side delts got bigger? You're focusing on heavy pulling. Why did your rear delts get bigger? Reg Park actually, I asked this to his son, John Park, and he told me that Reg Park used to get asked the same question.
Mm.
He didn't do side lat raises or rear delt raises. He just did heavy pressing and heavy pulling. And he attributes his side delts being so massive to just developing the overhead press, just like what you said.
Wow. Yeah. and it's crazy, you know, like I get it that it's not optimal per se, but when you're really freaking strong at that, you can't not have big delts. It's going to happen. Yeah. And also I think for Reg's case, the chest expander, because the first time I used that thing, I had some incredible DOMs in my side delts.
Yeah.
Like it really, it works it good, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. What about handstand push-ups? Are you a big fan of them?
So in a calisthenics context, they're absolutely the number one movement. Mm-hmm. I don't do a lot of handstand push-ups anymore, but if I am, it's very directed for hypertrophy. So what I figured out is that some of these calisthenics dudes don't have massive shoulders because they're focusing too much on the balance. I think free handstand push-ups where your legs are just moving aren't really good.
Yeah.
You should have foot support, which will allow you to do a lot more work and direct all the focus to the delts. We don't want to be balancing ourselves when trying to overload the delts. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And the other thing is you don't want to stop at the floor where your head is just touching the ground, because if you flip that upside down, you'll see that you're doing this much range of motion.
Exactly.
It's a half rep, so you're not lengthening your delt. What I found is you got to have your hands on a deficit of some kind. So plyometric boxes or parallettes.
Yeah.
Now you can get the full stretch, and those are so difficult. 99% of people will never get 15 reps. So to say that bodyweight training doesn't work is absolute lunacy.
Yeah.
Do some deep handstand push-ups, and you'll get very similar growth to the overhead press.
Absolutely.
And the final aspect to this is I like having my feet be facing that way. So basically my back is against the wall, right? I find that this changes your angle a little bit. You're not going to be 100% vertical. It'd be about here.
Yeah,
and that is actually better for the front delts, like I just described with the seated version. So it's the same exercise, but in reverse.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, and you're more stable because now the feet are like firm, right? And they're going to drag up a little bit better. And you're not going to worry about tipping because you're already leaned. Yeah. So you're at a slight slant. Your feet are just dragging up the wall, and you got that deficit action. And that will fry anyone's delts. So that's my preferred way of doing it. And it absolutely works. And I did a lot of them when global events happen.
Yep, exactly. All right, legs and calves.
All right.
Legs and calves.
I've been a calf day skipper for years. I just bought a special stool that I could use to get further range of motion. I won't be using it for the next few months. But around October, I'm going to start going hard on the calves. And I think I'll be able to put on some good mass. But for that, the biggest tip I'll give is to hold the bottom, because the Achilles tendon is very thick and stores a lot of elastic energy. So if your calves aren't growing from just traditional bouncy reps, focus on the way to stretch. You'll grow through stretch mediated hypertrophy, and it'll be all directed to the muscle itself. So good form. You can explode at the top. I'm not saying to do slow and controlled reps, but hold it for a good 2 to 5 seconds. Feel that pulling on the calf, and then obviously extend with a full range of motion. And I find that even going barefoot could be helpful in getting that mind-muscle connection. And a lot of guys actually do train calves that way. They will take their shoes off at the gym.
Absolutely.
And the best exercise I found for calves is the donkey calf raise. Man,
the stretch.
The stretch is unmatched. You feel that deep, like you're gonna be making sound effects that people saw you, like they'd be questioning.
Yeah.
You know? So like in truth, you just need 3: the standing calf raise, the seated, and then the donkey. But the donkey is the best of the best.
Yeah.
And I like doing it with a belt squat.
Nice.
Either you stand on the stool with just the weight hanging off like your belt, or you go on a belt squat machine and then you just bring the stool in there. Either way, it's going to have the same effect.
Yeah.
And you don't, because the thing is, a lot of these calf raise machines, you're putting extra pressure on your back, and sometimes the alignment is a little bit off. It might feel off on your joints, you know. So I find that the belt squat version, it goes with your natural anthropometry.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I could talk about quads after.
Go for it. Sorry.
Quads, barbell back squats are going to serve most people if they just become intermediate lifters. They might even be happy with their size. I find a really good mass measurement to shoot for most naturals is 24 to 26 inches. You really don't need anything more than that. And if you look at the old school bodybuilders, that's basically what they had. So that's how you get the look. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of strength. You don't need to be an elite powerlifter. So I think when you enter elite territory of lower body strength, now you're going to have that tree trunk look. Like I think John Grimmick is the only exception who had more of a massive lower body appearance. But all the other ones, they were a bit less developed, right? And I think that's because he was so freaking strong, right? So if you get your squat between 315 and 500, that's more than enough for 99% of you, and that's just me keeping it real. And for quads, you have to do it in a biased style, right? So get some freaking squat shoes, do high bar, not low bar, and full range of motion at the bottom to get the stretch on the vastus medialis. You're good, you know. And even doing 3 plates, sets of 10 is going to do wonders, you know. That would be the easiest way to do it. You can also supplement it with some belt squats, which is the same exercise, but now there's no pressure on your discs. So without compression, you get free volume. It's very easy to recover from. Overall, a solid addition. Otherwise, if you don't like any of those, I mean, leg presses and hack squats, they've been around for a while. They've, developed great legs. You can't go wrong with their addition. Even doing squats on the Smith machine by having the feet out in front of you, you get that friction action. It's going to be a little bit more quad biased. But for me personally, barbell back squats, right? And then if you want to isolate your quads, I found the sissy squat is freaking good. Yeah. They're quite hard. Most people can't even do 10 reps with their body weight. So feel free to grab onto a power rack or something and get that full range of motion, lean back. Don't get your glutes involved. And then when you get progressively stronger, you can wear a weight vest or hold a plate on your chest. Mm-hmm. And there's different ways to change your strength curve. Like you can even have a suspension system on you, such that you're doing a pendulum sissy squat. And those will make it a little bit easier in the bottom. Yeah, to really hit that mid range. And I generally favor those over unilateral work for getting the stretch on the rectus femoris, just because I don't like having to alternate back and forth, and I feel like stability could be a limiting factor unless you're grabbing onto something, and in general it could be a bit of a hassle to set up. Like a Hatfield split squat is with the feet being elevated, right? That's probably one of the best movements you could do, but is everyone going to do that? Likely not, just because it's a pain in the ass, right? So I just boil it down to squats and sissy squats for the most part. And then, you can also isolate with leg extensions if you want to hit the shortened position, but in truth, you probably don't need to. Like it doesn't take much. Just get stronger at, these compound movements. You'll probably be fine.
Yeah. I find there's way too much emphasis on leg extensions. People talk about getting the deep cuts and all that without having the mass. And it's only when you have the mass that you get those three-dimensional muscular delineations popping out from here, there, everywhere.
I just started doing them this year, and before that, my legs were 25.5 inches. So, like, what's it really adding? A small amount, like it gives you that quad separation, absolutely. But the thing is, you can get that with a sissy squat and even unilateral work. It's not mandatory. The only thing that it does special is it's the only exercise for the most part that allows you to efficiently get the squeeze in for the rectus femoris. But other than that, it's nothing magical. And a lot of the old school bodybuilders didn't even do leg extensions because it didn't exist.
Exactly.
And they still got impressive legs. So
arms, one of the most favorite topics for bodybuilders.
Yes.
I think is necessary for growing big arms.
So I'm someone who struggled to build my arms for a very long time. And the reason is that I was listening to minimalist powerlifters. And this is where going back to old school bodybuilding is correct. They had it figured out. Not only do you have to get stronger at the compound movements to really build your base, but then you have to isolate. So if someone says just do close grip bench and weighted chin-ups and you'll have massive arms, I don't think that's good advice because I've done that. I did a 380 close grip bench and my arms barely grew at all from that.
Yeah.
And I did 4 plates on the weighted pull-up. My biceps didn't get bigger. It was my freaking lats. So every time I focused on those movements, like sure, when you get your foundational strength, it does wonders. Your first 3-plate bench, your first 3-plate pull-up, it's good. But after that, it's going to go to the prime mover. And that's what I've discovered through experience, not only with myself, but working with so many over the years. We all have the same story. So I feel like isolation work is mandatory. There's no way around it. And the movements you pick are extremely important. Because if you screw that up, you're going to get a lot of joint pain. So eventually you're going to stop doing them. And you won't be getting the most out of your isolation work. And also the timing of it, where you program it, right? So if you want big biceps, you can't go wrong with basic barbell and dumbbell curls. honestly. And there's new evidence, you can say, point to the fact that the stretch might not affect the biceps as much in particular. Now, I don't know how valid that is. Like, we can look at the physiology, right? But then there's the real world experiences. Gymnasts who do straight arm work, the old school bodybuilders who did incline dumbbell curls, even flat dumbbell curls to get an extended stretch, it seems to work wonders. And I think it hits the long head, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, yeah.
And you also get more out of less weight. You don't have to go as heavy, and it keeps your form strict. So there could be additional merit, right? Like, even if the biceps don't experience stretch-mediated hypertrophy, I still think those are good exercises. And in my experience, when I start including stretching movements, my arms seem to respond well. Now, would I get the same effect if I just did the mid-range? I don't know. So as a safe bet, I would just say barbell curls. You know, it pretty much has a perfect strength curve. You know, when your arm is at 90 degrees, that's when it's going to have the most tension. Dumbbell curls seated, alternating. I know you like your preacher curls. That's not bad either. The thing is that the bicep is not a complicated muscle. It's elbow flexion, right? So anything where you're doing that, not excessively raising the shoulders either, in my opinion, because the bicep, it assists in shoulder flexion, but it's not a shoulder flexor, right?
Yeah.
You can add a little bit of it, but don't be doing curls like that, you know? It shouldn't look like a clean or anything. But to simplify it, I'll just say barbell curls if they agree with your anthropometry. Otherwise, you can use dumbbells or cables as well to focus on the squeezing movements, because it's not just enough to get the mid-range in, because those free weight variations, unless you change your body angle, like in a spider curl, you're not going to get that extra squeeze at the top.
Yeah.
So that's where cables could be beneficial. And then the triceps, it's all about the long head. That's pretty much the only thing you got to focus on for the most part, because the lateral and medial head both cross the elbow joint. So anything that you do is going to work them sufficiently. You get stronger at your presses. That I will admit, it will do a pretty good job. And whenever you isolate, it's still getting hit, right? Including the regular push downs that most people do. So I think if you're going to isolate the tris, it's got to be the back of the arm. That's that mass measurement. It's what makes it look impressive when you're not flexing. And it really will add inches.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And a good way to know if your long head is lacking, this I discovered recently, is when you're shredded. Because you can see all the muscle separation, right? If your lateral head is thicker than your long head, you got a problem. And you're leaving out a lot of gains. So usually the way that's going to be developed is through overhead extensions of some kind, or in general, changing the angle so that the arm is behind you. So you got to get, and the way that you described it to me recently was you can actually move your elbow while you're extending.
Yeah.
That's actually good for the long head, you know? But an even better way is actually a push down where you're in external rotation and simultaneously including shoulder extension. That right there is going to maximally squeeze that long head. So the best way is with using two ropes, all right? And you're not just doing push downs here. You're getting the full contraction all the way in the back. It's like a kickback, but it's not, you know? Yeah. So that's how you would squeeze it. Again, with ropes or two cables on the sides, right? And I find that including those with any overhead movement, I typically prefer cables because you can get better lined up with the elbow joint, you know, whereas some of the barbells and dumbbells can be a little bit restrictive. So there's going to be more pressure on your elbows, right? The thing is, it still works, the long head. It's just, does it cause you discomfort, right? But the movement is the same, you know, whether you're upside down or standing, it doesn't matter. You just got to have the functions in mind. So, yeah, that combination is what's going to get massive triceps, in addition to focusing on the presses. Like, you got to build your base first.
Nice. You just reminded me of an old school exercise. It's called the 3-way tricep extension that I haven't explained yet. It's I want to do a video on it. I think it's time. think you're gonna like it.
Okay, sounds good.
It's like almost a three-way dumbbell, a three-way kickback is the best way to explain it.
I'm trying to envision that.
You actually use a barbell. Just the fact that you extended your arms so far backwards with the rope reminded me of the action. It's three ways. It's really hard enough to do a kickback with a barbell because you kind of here. You're supposed to then lean forward and extend your arms over your head as much as possible as phase 2.
Oh.
Then phase 3 is to hold that arm position and come upright again.
Oh, that sounds unique.
Yeah. I want to do a demo, and it is freaking crazy for your triceps. It is just a killer.
And I can only imagine the squeeze on that.
Oh yeah, it's madness. I forget who did it. I think it's Marvin Eder and or Larry Scott. I know who. The black dude, what's his name? Larry Scott's kind of idol. George Payne, that's it. So the story goes that Larry Scott was in a trash heap when he came across a bunch of muscle mags, flipped over the first one, flipped it open and found an article on George Payne on how he built his triceps. The first thing that Larry did was go home, build himself a makeshift barbell, and did the George Payne tricep workout, which is why if you've seen online his photos as a teenager, he's flexing his tricep because that's all he trained for the first month or 3 months. And he did that workout, and his triceps are just enormous from doing the George Payne workout, right? And in this workout, George Payne describes the three-way tricep extension, the tricep kickback. So I remember that.
That sounds like an interesting lost art. Maybe I'll try it out.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anyway, that's arms. Moving back to the yoke. I've heard you talk a lot about this on your channel. You've mentioned a bit about it today. Is it just the upper back, or is it the neck and traps? Is it the whole thing?
It's the whole thing combined. But what I would say is that the neck is even more important than the traps. If you have nothing but a jacked neck, you're going to look impressive.
Oh yeah.
It's give me a guy with a 20-inch neck with okay traps versus someone with small neck and big traps. The guy with the bigger neck will look better.
Oh yeah.
But obviously you want to develop both, and they kind of do work synergistically. It's hard to not have both, but at the end of the day, you need to isolate both regions. And in the case of the neck, it's not enough to just do your compound movements. You need the flexion and extension. And the best way to do that is with a plate on your forehead. If you want to work the front part of your neck, you just lay on a bench. And then for the rear, using a harness is preferred. I like the seated version where you're bent forward and you just extend like that. Very classic. People have been doing this forever. Or you can do it with bands standing up, or even in a cable station where the resistance is coming in front of you. Now you're just extending this way.
Right.
But that's all you really need. There's also side work, but that's going to be primarily beneficial for combat athletes and field athletes because they're getting hit in the head and there's that constant movement. But if you just do those two, it's going to help a lot. And most people can gain at least an inch or two on their neck through isolation work.
Nice. Very nice. Finally, grip strength in forearms. Do you do much grip strength work, or is it just forearm work, or both?
I used to. Now it's not really my focus because my forearms are kind of overdeveloped. Like I don't know if you could see them properly.
Oh yeah, they're nice and chunky.
Like they're pretty jacked. The way I developed that was by following arm wrestlers. This is before it was mainstream. There was very little information, but on YouTube you would see some of their methods that they would talk about. It was very obscure stuff. It almost looks like ego lifting, but it's for a specific purpose, right? So it's mostly going to be partial repetition curls in like a hammer grip or not fully supinated position. So it might be like semi-supinated and a lot of wrist flexion movements. But the arm wrestlers, they usually do it in a way that mimics arm wrestling. So they're gonna have their arm on top of a table with a cable, right? And they'll just flex their wrist like that with resistance, and they get stronger in that way. So what they're trying to do is mimic their sport, but the side effect is you get these huge freaking forearms in the process. Nice. And then actually, the old school strongmen did a lot of grip work, and that's kind of where that's one of the methods that I failed to mention earlier. The fat bar, they used a lot of axles in particular. That's going to develop crazy grip strength. Towel pull-ups are incredible. Just getting stronger at your pull-ups as a whole, I found, do wonders for your grip. And there's even the crushing strength that's very specific. You won't develop that without using hand grippers of some kind, because there's different kinds of grip strength. You know, there's your open hand,
open, closed.
Exactly. So you need to work that specifically if you want to, you know. And I think Robert Baraban has his own grippers with the springs, so that's really cool. But I used to do it with this thing. They were called heavy duty grippers. They were kind of an imitation of the Captain of Crush. And I forget what I worked up to, but I think I was between 250 and 300. That's what the amount was. Nice. And then also the wrist roller, but not the one where you just hold it up, because I find that your shoulders get a little bit too tired. I find if you just suspend weight off a barbell, then you can get the same effect, but directed to the forearms. So I would say for this, farmer walks too. Anything where you're doing holds, carries are freaking money. If you just look at what strongman competitors are doing, as well as competitors of grip sport and arm wrestling, that's going to be the best thing you can do for your forearms, and they will grow like weeds, you know. But nice.
Have you actually read Dinosaur Training by Brooks?
Of course, that's one of my favorites.
All right,
I've read it multiple times. I love it.
That's great. He talks all about that stuff.
Yeah, you know what's funny though? A lot of people find it strange. Like, they think it's only a niche group of people that follow that advice and that it's dated or ineffective. Like, a lot of people talk trash about Dinosaur Training, but I see nothing but positive when I read that book.
Well, that's basically what we're all doing, Dinosaur Training.
In a sense, yeah.
I see it much carryover from that kind of teaching.
Yeah, the emphasis on the singles, the carries, the overloads, progressive range of motion. That's a method I used to use back in the day. They helped me get freakishly strong. You know, when people said it didn't work for carryover, I did a 655 hack deadlift, and it was because of progressive range of motion. I started on 6-inch blocks and I worked my way down. So it worked. Now, it wasn't a conventional or sumo, so, you know, it is what it is, but that's what I was training for, and it worked in that context.
Still, 655. Damn, that's impressive. Okay. What does your typical training week then now look like?
So I trained full body basically all my lifting career until the end of 2019. I then switched over to upper lower, and I've been on it ever since. So it's a simple Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, then Thursday, Friday on, and then weekends off. So 4 days a week, that's all I do. And that's the split.
Why did you do the split? Like, you said you did full body all your life. Did you reach a certain benchmark that you said, okay, or was it exhaustion?
The main reason is that I got incredibly lazy on my legs. So those full body workouts were really just upper with some low tier leg movements thrown in. So what ended up happening is I developed an elite upper body, but rather intermediate lower. Like, it's kind of embarrassing, you know, like I was benching more than I was squatting. And it's not because I have bad leg genetics. They're actually above average in many respects. And I'm anatomically built to squat. I have a long torso with short legs. I can be rather upright with good mobility. But I just didn't want, like, I really mean it when I tell you, I don't want that tree trunk look. You know, I look at physiques like Steve Reeves and I'm like, that's the look, right? So I did it on purpose to not overdevelop my legs, not to mention the fact that I was just lazy as a whole, right? So by me switching it to upper lower, it's allowed me to finally correct this weakness. I would say my legs are pretty darn jacked right now. They're what they used to be, actually even more. And I did a 600 sumo deadlift recently. It wasn't even an RPE 10. My squat is approaching 500. Like, I have some respectable numbers now. So I needed the lower day to keep myself accountable, or else I was just going to do like I always do, skip the legs.
Yep, I hear you. It's one thing that I've also incorporated recently.
Yeah, and it's an efficient way to train. You're not living in the gym, you know?
Exactly. Otherwise, you're there for quite a long time. So you've talked about your favorite lifts and also what you recommend for each body part. What in your opinion is the number one method, if you were to look at all the different kinds of methods there are and systems? Would you say there is one number one method for naturals to gain mass and size, or is there a secret?
Oh, we're just talking about bodybuilding, not like if we're saying an all-encompassing system where you're going to maximize your size, strength, and athleticism, then I would say the number one method is the conjugate system, popularized by Louis Simmons. But that's you becoming the jack of all trades. You're hitting everything. You want it all. Not that you're overly specialized in one given avenue. So if you look at it like an RPG, like your stats are all high, but not one of them is not maxed out per se. You're just well-rounded, right? So I would say conjugate is definitely number one for that. Not powerlifting. I'm not talking about powerlifting before some trolls hop in. I'm just saying in a overall sense. But for bodybuilding, is there a one thing? Not really. I find that double progression and dynamic double progression is what most people really need, with some exercise rotation thrown in. But really, I think most people just need to stop being so impatient and give themselves some time, because usually a lot of these issues where they can't grow is just a matter of time. Like, that's all it is. If you were to wait it out long enough, eventually you would make it through the end of the tunnel. So you don't need overly complex periodized programs. You don't have to overcomplicate this. You just need to find movements that suit your physiology, that work the correct tissue you're trying to work on, and you rotate movements when appropriate, and then just get progressively stronger. You have to get stronger, either by forcing it or automatically just letting it occur, if your programming is sound. So training is not, it shouldn't make your mind explode. It's fun to learn all these nuances, but at the end of the day, it's going to be consistency in the long term. That's the real secret. A guy who's at this for 10 plus years is going to have a better physique than someone who did things optimally for 3 to 4 years. It's just, you got to pay your dues, and that's the message I keep trying to stress. So there's nothing magical. It's just time, bro.
Yeah, time. You said it, man.
Yeah.
All right. Just the last few questions on training in itself. More about opinions about extremes, I guess, or opinions. What do you think is more important, sticking to your primary movements or variations?
When you say sticking to the movement, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so a better question would be, what's your opinion for a person that goes bench press, deadlift, and squat is the most important, or are variations more important? What's your opinion there?
You have to know exactly what you want. For powerlifting, the classic big three is what you should be focusing on. Mm-hmm. Specificity of training is number one, right? But for bodybuilding, the big three might not be what you need. A variation might be superior. Like, if someone was only interested in mass, I would say that a Larson press probably has a slight edge over a regular bench press, because you don't need that leg drive, and you also don't need a massive arch, right? So for bodybuilding, that's what you would do, a squat. You don't need to do a powerlifting style squat. Wide stance, low bar, slightly below parallel. If you do an Olympic style, or even favoring like an SSB squat, that's probably gonna do more for you in a hypertrophy context than deadlifts. My opinion, there's a lot of debate on, oh, what's better, conventional or sumo? I think both aren't ideal for bodybuilding. If someone strictly wants size, do a Romanian deadlift or a trap bar deadlift. I think they're going to serve most people a lot better. It suits their anthropometry more. They can get, well, for the RDL, they can get more out of less weight, get the stretch reflex in the hamstrings. You're going through your active range of motion. You're keeping that constant tension in a sense, and because it's not broken up. And the trap bar, like people say it's bad because it loads your lower back less. But we're doing a hip hinge to primarily focus on the glutes and hamstrings. And the spinal erectors come in secondarily, but it's not the main reason why we do a hip hinge. First and foremost, it's the bigger, badder muscles, right? So, and you're still going to work your lower back a lot. It's just slightly more shifted to other regions. And the trap bar will hit your quads a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
For bodybuilding, recovery, I think people should do those. So if I'm being honest with you, I would say, yeah, for bodybuilding, variations are probably better, but you got to know which ones they are. Yeah. And it still goes back to the fact that we're doing the big compounds. It's nothing gimmicky here. It's just a little something extra. You know, the fundamental movement pattern is there. There's just a little shift to make it that much better for size.
Nice. This is another topic that is often discussed. What's better overall, being shredded or having a 10 to 20% body fat? What's better?
10 to 20% all day.
Absolutely, man.
Shreddedness, if you do it as a natural, you're going to feel like death.
Yeah.
I did it properly last year. A 6-month slow cut where I basically kept most of my muscle, and I got down to single digit. And yeah, you look amazing. I'm not gonna lie about that. You take your clothes off, wow, it's something else. But in clothing, you're floating. You look like a do you even lift status, and you're weak. You have no energy. You're constantly lethargic, cold, low blood pressure, not satisfied, hunger-wise. Basically, you make yourself depressed by being in that state. Not only mentally, because it's so exhausting to be in that state, but physically, you don't feel your best. And I would imagine testosterone levels decline as well. Your sex drive is lower. You might have urges about once a week tops. Some people get no urges, which is a scary thing. It's difficult to maintain. You're not going to sustain it in most cases. And it's probably less healthy than being slightly fluffier. Like, you can still be extremely lean. You can be 11, 12% body fat, have all the cuts you want, but you're not going to be paper thin skin. Vascularity everywhere, or striations in your glutes, for example. But you feel great. You look better in a general state. That's the way. And just for gaining mass, how are you going to put on some real lean tissue when you're trying to maintain such a state year round? It's very, very difficult, even if you do it all right.
I agree 100%. Being there myself, and I was after COVID last year, I did my own cut. I showed you my photos, and although I only reached 10%, I felt just like you said, depressed, and I happened to measure my testosterone. And I remember the very first time I did a proper shred, got down 10% again, and my testosterone dropped about 75%.
Wow.
Below normal. Below normal. And I was I went to the doctors, and they were saying, we have to measure you 2 more times because over the next few months, because if you consistently show low testosterone, you might be eligible for TRT. And I was like, this is bad. So I went back to more 15%. Testosterone went up. done.
That's the thing. Like some people are going to say, oh, when you're fluffier, your estrogen is higher and therefore you'll have less T, but it doesn't actually play out that way in the real world.
Yeah. No, it's definitely worth staying at a healthy body fat.
Healthy body fat, you know, and you have to figure out what that is for you. Some people take it to the extreme and they're just going to be like really chubby year round. They're like, oh, I can't be leaner. No, it's because you just don't have the discipline. Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest, I can maintain 10 to 12%. It's when I do single digit where it becomes impossible. But I still did fine, like at 160 pounds, you know, there's no problems there. So when people have to lose 40, then they complain that after 20 pounds lost that they feel horrible. In most cases, they're making excuses.
Exactly. All right. Commercial gym versus home gym.
I prefer home gym. And it's crazy because now I do both. I'm back in the gym, and I realize I prefer training at home. There's just something about it. You own all of your equipment. You carefully selected everything. It's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You grow with your home gym. You remember the PRs. You see how it evolves over time. It's just there's something personal, and that room becomes your training room. Mm-hmm. That when you walk in there, you become a warrior. You have that. It's like it brings out a different side of you, mm-hmm. and it forces you to be disciplined and accountable because what are you gonna do, right? Like a lot of people, they won't actually train at home because it's too convenient for them, right? It's like, oh, I'll do it whenever I want. But if you can get out of that mentality and just, train when needed, no matter the time, then that's really going to build some character. Like there are workouts that I do at midnight, not because I want to, but it ends up happening that way. And maybe the gym is closed at 10. So instead of just waiting till the next day, I'm going to train right then and there. Mm-hmm. So besides that, you have unlimited waiting time. You don't have people up your ass, like, because if you're resting for longer periods of time, they might start to get a little bit annoyed. If you want to superset things, you're not hogging all the equipment. I can go from my power rack to my dumbbells, no problem. They're just there. You're in full. The weights are consistent. Mm-hmm. In the gym. If they're not calibrated, you don't know if you're replicating the same amounts every day. Whereas the home gym, I mean, they're the same plates, right? So it could be a few pounds off when you're at a gym. Even the equipment itself might not be the best quality, right? Like the power rack that I use at the gym, the holes aren't perfect in terms of their spacing. So when I squat, it's going to be too low, and the J hooks are too far out. So it changes my form a little bit. And in some cases, you can't even do specific movements because the benches are bolted to the ground.
Yeah.
So you gotta do a bench press, not in a power rack where there's no safety pins, and then you're relying on spotters, you know? And then there's the idiots that you see in there, but that's whatever. It is what it is. If you're doing things right, they might actually come up to you for advice, so that's always nice. And and gyms can be convenient in the sense that everything is just there for you. You go from one station to the next, and you're not setting everything up yourself. But that's also easy mode, I would say. When you're in the home gym, and especially when you got the basics, just a bar and a freaking power rack. Every time you do an exercise, you gotta adjust settings. You gotta adjust your safety pins. You're sliding plates on and off. It's not just I'm gonna go to this station and everything's fresh. Like it's different. And I find that it just builds character in a different kind of way. And you can go at your own pace and just, enjoy being a warrior in the modern age.
I agree. Like I love selecting my own music.
That too, loud. You don't have to wear earbuds.
Yeah. I like the fact that I actually enjoy that period between exercises where I have to set the exercise up, because I tune into the exercise.
That's true.
It's almost meditative. Your body goes, okay, this is now time for this. So let's get prepared. You start thinking about it. your body starts preparing itself mentally. Whereas if you go from station to station, you don't have that opportunity to really think about it, you know?
You're right. There's the aspect of preparing for it.
Yeah.
You know, changing the angle of your bench,
Mm-hmm.
you know, taking it out of the rack, back in.
Yeah.
Just the adjustment process. That is meditative. I like how you phrase that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my own experience. Machines or free weights?
I built basically, well, I basically built 97% of my physique with free weights. I say 3%, if that, because I only started using them this year for the most part, and in very limited applications. It's only if I go to the gym, for one, and it'll be one exercise tops for the pressing muscles or isolation for the most part. Or it could be more nuanced than that. But look, free weights are easily accessible for most people, especially in a home gym context.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a barbell and some good plates, and they're going to last you a lifetime. You're focusing on the fundamental movement patterns that built the physiques of all the old school greats. It's going to work for you too. Stability is pretty high on most of these movements if you know what you're doing. You just got to get your setup right. Progressive overloading potential is on point. A lot of them have good enough biomechanics. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's fun. And yeah, like machines though, what the advantage they have is that a lot of them are incredibly stable. So it's not you who has to create the stability. So the motor unit recruitment is going to be higher from your muscles just off that. By how much? I don't know. I think it's a lot less than some people would state. It might be like 10% more, something like that. And then some machines work with your body a little bit more. It's kind of a contradiction. Like free weights, your body's going to move the way it wants to move, right? Whereas the machine locks you into a specific position. But sometimes that locking aspect goes better with the function of the muscle. And what I mean by that is, if you do a barbell bench press, your humerus doesn't fully adduct because you're in a fixated position. You're pressing right here, right? Whereas if I do dumbbells, I can come in and out.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with dumbbells, like I talked about before, is the stability aspect, right? Not to mention the fact that you get reduced range of motion. So if I do a converging chest press machine, now it's the same thing as the dumbbells, right? But I'm just grabbing onto handles so I can get that stretch in, and I'm converging against resistance. And actually, there will be peak tension at the top as well. So it can have that advantage in that aspect. But the thing is, you don't have to do it for everything, you know? And then for back training, I think machines can be valuable just because they take out the lower back, not because of anything magical beyond that point. You know, like we discussed before how you can manipulate the arm path, and the strength curve is still going to be the same in most cases, unless you have a special kind of machine that's like really heavy at the bottom and lighter at the top. And most gyms don't have that. So I would say for back, free weights could be just as good. Just that you might want to consider something like chest support and getting the angles right, you know? Yeah. And then for legs, the best way of hitting your quad in the shortened position is with a leg extension. But again, you don't technically need it. And like, how big do you want your legs to be in the first place? Like if we look at the Bronze era bodybuilders, they had worse legs than the Silver era, and the Golden had better than the Silver, but the Golden were also on a bunch of roids, right? So it's like, was it because of the drugs or the addition of all these new movements, you know? I think certain aspects of modern leg training are a little bit more complete, but maybe you don't need that anyway. So it's like, at the end of the day, it goes back to the fundamentals, and you got to know what you're getting out of that movement. And as long as stability is high, whether it's free weights or machines, and you're biasing the tissue correctly, you're going to put on some good size. But I generally favor free weights. It's what I prefer, and it's what built this body in the first place.
Yeah. Final question regarding training. Strength, training for strength or training for shape?
Well, what's your goal, right? The thing is, though, you still have to get strong. Like that's going to be the path regardless, right? So I think you can approach it two ways. Either you're getting stronger to get bigger, or you're getting stronger and you're getting bigger and that's making you stronger.
Yeah.
The thing is, they're both the same. They're correlated, but it's about the mindset aspect to it. Like, it's a little nuance, but at the end of the day, natural bodybuilders have to improve their strength, or else they won't get bigger. It's as simple as that. This is the best correlation we have to date. It's not 1-to-1, but it's pretty darn close to it. To the point where you can even take powerlifters and have them go through DEXA scans and predict with over 90% accuracy who's going to win that competition, because they all know how to do the movement and they're all in a similar weight class, but the one with more muscle is going to win.
Yeah.
So muscle mass is tied to strength. You can't separate the two, no matter what some roided bodybuilder is going to say. And that doesn't mean focusing on 1 rep maxes, because that's another extreme, right? But it does mean that something has to rise over time. If you want massive biceps and you're curling 20-pound dumbbells, well, it's probably in your best interest to double your strength. Get those dumbbell curls to 40 pounds. Hey, if you do 50 to 60, I'd be hard pressed to believe that, your biceps don't look pretty darn good to a certain extent. So the focus is still strength, but the thing is, it simultaneously doesn't have to be the mental focus, because it's going to happen regardless. But the thing is, it needs to occur. You know what I mean? So,
of course.
So the way I see it, like, if we could just boil it down to one thing, I'm just going to say strength, because that encompasses everything. But I can also argue the complete opposite and yield the same net effect. So it's really about the wordplay here. But in summary, if you're natural, you got to get stronger.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people may take that the wrong way. And I'm also a very big strength advocate. It doesn't mean that you don't have to train for hypertrophy, because it's necessary. And I think that's the message you're trying to put across. If you only train, for example, like a powerlifter, you're going to look like a powerlifter.
Yes.
If you want to train like a bodybuilder, you got to do the strength training with the hypertrophy that goes with it. So.
Yes. And you can use strength training methods on bodybuilding movements.
Yeah. All right, man. Finally, just a couple of questions on diet. What foods do you find most important in gaining mass and strength?
Well, this is where we might differ in beliefs, but I find that plant-based nutrition is the way. Yes. So whole grains and beans. That's what I generally focus on, and dark leafy vegetables and juicy fruits.
Are you a vegan then?
I'm not. I used to be, but now I'm about 80% plant-based.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. That's interesting. I've got nothing against that. It's just that I know myself I can't because of my own genetics. I have trouble. I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh.
I'm gluten intolerant. So you can understand there are already some restrictions. That means that I also can't eat all animal products either. So I'm very selective with
so on both ends, you're a bit restrictive.
I'm also, what is it called, avidin intolerant, so I can't eat oats.
Even oats?
Yeah, I can't eat legumes or beans because they contain lectins. I'm lectin intolerant.
The lectin thing, you got to be careful with that, right? Like with Dr. Gundry, and his whole thing is to sell his anti-lectin shield, right? And he doesn't paint the whole story in the sense that you can reduce the lectin content by properly cooking your beans. So there's ways, there's definitely ways around it. And when we look at the evidence, the people who eat beans, you always see positive health outcomes in the long term. And it's the one food that's really associated with longevity. Like, all the blue zones have it in common, and a lot of old living people, like, if you want to draw a correlation. So I think beans are great. Not that you don't, not that you have to have a crazy amount every single day. You can limit it to a cup a day. But even combining beans and meat will serve you more than just meat in isolation. Like if you do black beans plus ground beef, that's a good combo.
I come from South America, man, so believe me, we got hundreds of bean recipes, and
Oh, it's amazing.
like feijoada. I don't know if you've heard of that. The Brazilian rice with beans is just freaking
Yeah, well,
ridiculous.
rice and beans, that's the combo right there. Lentils are probably my favorite as well.
How do you cook them then? Like you mentioned, because one of the issues I have is obviously with digesting. I love beans. Don't get me wrong. I said I'm South American. I'm supposed to eat that, but I can't. I get some really bad stomach issues with it. How do you cook? You mentioned that there's a certain way of cooking them properly. How would you cook to remove the lectin content? Because if I can put beans in my diet, man, that'd be awesome.
And so one piece of advice that might serve you and anyone who wants to consume more beans is to start microdosing the beans. And I learned about this from Dr. Furman. He states that if you can't handle any quantities, start with a teaspoon a day and literally increase a bean at a time from there on. You can even weigh it with a scale. Wow. And what you'll find is it's like exercise, right? Some movements cause you pain when you hit certain numbers, but if you lower the weight and then progressively build on, you'll find that you're good to go. The same with beans. You have to build the microbiome. It takes a little bit of time. And I think after 2 or 3 days, the bacteria starts to shift. But after 3 weeks, that's when you really have more diversity in your gut. So I would start by slowly introducing. If you start with like a can's worth of beans, from day one, you're done. It's not a terrible idea, right? You can do that along with fermented foods, by the way. Like sauerkraut and kimchi are often paired with this, right? And that can also be like a teaspoon. And you slowly increase, right? And what you'll find is that if you have this diversity in your gut and you're regularly consuming beans, then the way you cook them probably matters less than if you're initially sensitive. But what I would say is for those who want to really maximize, right? I would look at the FODMAP, which it indicates certain kinds of beans that you might be more sensitive to. I forget what they are, but there's a list of them, right? So you can have the beans that are easier on digestion. They're not all the same. I think like black beans are more intense than like navy beans, for example. I forget what they are, but you can start with the low FODMAP beans, right?
Okay.
And in terms of cooking them, most people are going to say you have to soak them the night before, and then you can cook them directly after. But that's probably not necessary, especially if you use something like a pressure cooker where you boil the beans. I usually just boil them, You'll be able to put them directly in, and you can also rinse them beforehand. So you want to rinse the lentils. You can rinse it 2 or 3 times as a maximum protocol, but give them one quick rinse, or you boil them, right? And then you drain the water and then reboil them. So that because you're going to see the color of the water changes when you add those beans, right? So you get rid of that stuff. And then the second time you boil it, you'll be good. But that's the typical thing. And then after boiling, you could do whatever you want with those beans. You could then proceed to fry them or whatever. But
so is the water containing a lot of the lectins then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's where you're going to see a lot of that stuff is going to be in the water. Now, it also takes away a little bit from the nutritional profile, but not to a significant extent.
That's interesting. Okay. I might try that myself because I said I'm a big fan of beans. Now, actually talking about animal products, are you, even though you have I would assume because you have beans in your diet, that would already take care of some of the protein. Are you specific about the kind of animal proteins that you have, or I guess more my question, are you into then the older school style of eating of raw milk, meat, eggs?
Oh, I'm not really into that kind of stuff, with the exception of liver once in a blue moon. Though you got to be careful with that because of the, I believe, copper overload. It can affect your balance. It affects one of the 2 minerals, right? But for me, protein has never been difficult. Even when I was on a mostly animal-based diet, I've always found it to be somewhat overrated, and that's what the data seems to suggest as well. Like 0.8 grams per pound of body weight is all you really need, and that's based off your lean body mass, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I look at a shredded weight of me being like 145, I do 145 times 0.8. That's only like 116 grams of protein a day, which is about, I usually get between 120 and 160 on a daily basis. And I found that it's not difficult to reach that amount. Like, it doesn't really matter what the hell you eat, as long as it's a clean diet, right? Like, that's the message that needs to be preached. We're talking about whole, unrefined foods.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself, whether it's animal-based or plant-based, is going to ensure not only a great micronutrient profile, but adequate protein 9 out of 10 times. I think the issues arise on both camps when they're eating a bunch of processed garbage. And for the vegans, that could include the fake meats, which
Mm-hmm.
is filled with different oils and is
Right.
actually low in protein. It's garbage,
Yeah.
right? So that's why the diet, if we're going to talk about being vegan, the diet that needs to be stressed is whole food, plant-based.
Exactly.
But the whole food aspect is what matters. And then when you're animal-based, you got to be whole foods, right?
Yeah.
You're not eating the processed versions of those. You're not having like those deli meats and shit like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You're eating the cleaner cuts. You're paying attention. So
Yeah.
overall protein, and if I do want more protein, by the way, I'll actually do a vegan protein powder, because I find that I'm lactose intolerant, but to a certain extent, like I can handle some dairy, but not too much. So I just find that it's easier to have a vegan protein powder instead.
Fair enough. I mean, I know that I preach animal products a lot. That's only because I admit for two reasons. Firstly, I'm biased because of my own genetics. I've told you I have a lot of trouble in eating vegan food. I did try to one day go really vegetarian, and it was just a nightmare. That's when I discovered all my intolerances, and I had to just stick to animal, as you said, animal-based but whole food. Over the years, I've discovered that it doesn't really matter what kind of food you eat. The most important thing is that it should be as close to nature as possible. That's key. That's what your body recognizes the most. And even when you look at the more extreme vegan, there's so much of a push of these plant-based fake meats. And I think that's actually not very beneficial, because I know I've had very violent reactions to those kinds of foods. And
it's usually seen as an easy gateway to get into plant-based, because people love their meat. Like I can't lie to you, steak is one of my favorite things to eat. I love it, but you know, so if you go vegan and now you don't have that anymore, well, how do you want to mimic that to a certain extent?
Yeah.
So you might include some of these foods or seitan, and you follow these specific recipes because you want to mimic it. So for those people who are transitioning, it can often be beneficial, or as a cheat meal, or you're out with friends or whatnot. But I agree that we need unrefined foods, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what the body recognizes. And it also goes to one of Vince Gironda's sayings, by the way. One should eat towards their genetics, towards their ancestry. It doesn't have to be just, steak and eggs.
Yeah, I think with your upbringing, you can do fun twists on those meals. Like I'm Greek and Italian, but I pretty much ate exclusively Italian food growing up, and it's my favorite. I can't stop. But the problem is, a lot of those foods are not good for you. So what I found is you have to modify the recipes. So I can't put sugar in my sauce, for example. I refuse to. I might take a date and chop it up and then toss it in. I'll put some monk fruit, or even the oil. A lot of Italians use like those vegetable oils.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use like avocado oil, for example. Not that oil is necessarily good for you. It's probably better to go oil free, to be honest. But you have to substitute. That's what it is. The substitution method. Or you make, instead of like a fatty meat sauce. You could do like a lentil bolognese or something. Like there's ways around it, but
Nice.
yeah, it's when you love eating a certain way, it's hard to just completely stop.
Yeah. Cool. It's all good, man. Yeah, I like talking to other people regarding whole food diets because there's so many ways to approach it.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
that's really awesome. All right, man. Some final words then. What's your ultimate message, or is there any final words you want to say, having covered your ideas on diet, your ideas on eating, your ideas on old school bodybuilding and lifting? Anything else you want to say?
I would say, when in doubt, look at the old school bodybuilders, because there's no question that they were natural. Steroids didn't even exist at the time. And look at the accomplishments. Look how far they took it with their limited knowledge and resources. You can do better in many cases. The community as a whole is growing. There's more information than ever before. We have great channels collaborating. There's no reason why you shouldn't reach the body of your dreams, provided that it's naturally attainable. And that's why I say, when in doubt, look at the old school greats, because there's no second guessing it.
Nice.
You can look like Eugene Sandow if you want. I don't find it's unrealistic. Heck, you can look like Fred Roland. You can acquire the muscle mass of Steve Reeves. You might not have their exact proportions, but in terms of like lean body mass and just looking impressive as hell, you need to train long enough. And that's not 3 to 5 years. It's 10 minimum.
Yeah.
But the longer, the better. And if you just stick to it, you never give up, and you continue to learn on a daily basis and surround yourself with people who are preaching the correct message, like Golden Era Bookworm, then you're going to go very far. Health is number one. I can't stress that enough. Stay away from drugs. It's a short-term trap. Eventually, you're going to lose all those gains, and you're never going to have that deep satisfaction that the old school greats had. So we're in a new age. This is the natty revolution.
Absolutely.
Join us. Believe in yourself. You know you can freaking do it. From day one, you knew you could do it. It's just that you've been polluted with all this nonsense, and now you're bringing it back to, oh, I have bad genetics, or I won't be able to do this. Screw all that. And just embrace the long-term grind, because that's what this is. Mm-hmm. It never stops. If the moment you decided you were going to pursue natural bodybuilding or strength training, the moment you realize that this was forever, for the most part. Not that you're going to be peak status the rest of your life, but this is until you die. Yeah. Get into the iron. That's it.
That's it, man. Iron for life.
That's it.
Nice, man. Very nice. All right, Alex, where can we find you? Where can we find you on the internet, on Instagram?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. If people want to find me, they can do so on the Alpha Destiny YouTube channel or my Instagram at Alex Leonidas Official. And I'll be sure to respond to your comments.
Very cool. You got a website as well?
Yeah, outalpha.com. If you want to look at some old articles that I wrote, and the programs are there too.
Sweet, man. Well, Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
And yeah, man. Don't know what to say. Mind blown.
Appreciate that.
Mind blown, man. All right. Yeah, that's all. That's all for today, guys. And I hope you enjoyed the interview with Alex. Any questions for Alex? You know where to find him. And I hope you enjoyed the interview. It's the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now.
See you guys.
As a natural bodybuilder, it is imperative to know your own testosterone levels, as they are a reflection of the anabolic environment created by your diet and training. I would highly recommend using the male hormone test kit from Let's Get Checked, and make sure you use my code GOLDEN30 for a 30% discount. Again, the advantage of checking yourself regularly is that you will know how well your body is anabolically primed to put on the much desired muscle you are working for. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, I mean, there's so much stuff that probably hasn't been proven by science, and it will take science to prove or disprove Vince. But to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's principles to bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles. But how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And believe me, it's a brilliant, brilliant program. Many people have used it. I know personally a lot of bodybuilders that have actually used it and made fantastic results with it. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these 3 books, as I call it, the Classic Physique Bundle, Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Now, the Pro Series of Bodybuilding, which was targeted for professional bodybuilders, contains 6 programs, each of which go for 2 months each. So it's a whole year, again, in preparation for competition. Online training is now available, including my new program, Novice to Classic, a program geared towards beginners and novices looking at developing a classic physique, as well as Classic Cut, geared at those who wish to lose weight and gain muscle fast. Details available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Iron Man Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. To support your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm for merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again at teespring.com/store/goldenerabookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/goldenerabookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding.